Hello everyone, this is Sandy Gagan. I'm coming to you from Figure Drawing 1260 today, and I'd like to share with you some of the beginning instruction about how to do an early block in. So the pencil that I'll be using today is the drafting pencil. I've got a kneaded eraser, and I've also got the rotary sharpener, and those are the tools that you'll need for today. So the first concept that I want to discuss with you is one called line of action. So the entire pose here, as you see underlying this drawing, can be summed up in one line or less. And we're looking at the overall tonal pattern or action of this form. And that's really important because it helps you to discover the gesture. Okay, so that's called the line of action. Now the gesture, as you begin this study, you want to quickly make a tick mark whenever you're doing a gesture and the very most wide point or low point of the figure, whichever you would like to do. Quickly determine the overall gesture. You should always start a gesture. When in class, my students often will do gesture studies in approximately 5 minutes or less, sometimes 2 minutes. All I want is the overall line of action. And these are all done with quick, long, linear strokes. I'm using that 3 fingers and my thumb at the back of the pencil. And so I'm using this pencil much like I'm using something that describes movement from the shoulder rather than movement from choking down on your pencil like this. That's very important when you're doing figure drawing. All right, so you always begin any figure drawing with a basic gesture. So from the gesture, we move next into the early block in and block in. And block in is really important because that's where you're going to get your first proportions. And gesture, you begin to do that, but you start really honing in on the best proportions for this figure. And this figure is a process. It's important to remember that you're moving from general to specific, not necessarily trying to finish anything, right, to begin with. That's important. Okay, so first off, again, we want to look for the fixed point. So the fixed point, you want to start up high and just make yourself a tick mark, just a small mark on the page. And then look over the overall drawing and determine, okay, there's the base of the foot or the base of the hand. That's the low point. Now those become your fixed points for your proportion. And you don't want to end up moving those because that's going to tell you how large your figure is. And if you stay or maintain the discipline of those fixed points, you'll be able to fit your figure drawing onto the page, and that's really important. Okay, so next you're going to have your variable points are your widths. So your widths coming out this direction from midline, this direction from this side of midline. Now your midline is always found from this key landmark. This landmark is where the clavicle here and here joins into the shoulder line. So this key landmark is right here. You've got the head of the manubrium, and the manubrium starts the head of the sternum, and it's just this long column coming down the thoracic chamber, ending about halfway of the rib cage. Now you've got this point and this point are called the AC process. And the AC process is really important because it's also going to give you your shoulder width, the proportion of your shoulder width. So number one landmark, you're going to start from here at the suprasternal notch. A common name for that is the pit of the neck. And then go down to the symphysis. And if that's obscured by the arm, then you just imagine where that midline is. So the two most important decisions here. One, shoulder line. And two, midline. I studied with a great living master today by the name of Robert Liberace. He told me that in any of his drawings, he always starts with those two decisions. The suprasternal notch to determine the overall trajectory of the midline. And a trajectory, these are called construction lines, and you just want to keep them light. So a trajectory is a two-dimensional line in one direction. And so it's very lightly done. Construction lines are again done at the back of your pencil. They're very light, and you want to stay up on the tip of your pencil so you don't get a really thick granular line. You want more this and less this. Okay, so that's line quality. We want a nice light value line to begin these drawings. All right, so then you have already started your gesture, and your gesture is a really important part of the base. The artist Dean Keller, he used to tell his students that a drawing is won or lost in the first 5 minutes of the drawing, and I believe that that's true because the gesture sets up the framework for the rest of the drawing. All right, so next we're going to go from the shoulder line, midline, remembering that we're going to advance this whole drawing from general to specific. We're going to use what's called a plumb line. Now, a plum is just, it's not the fruit. A plumb line is just a heavy weight on top of a string. And because of the Earth's gravitation, that pulls that to a vertical line. And so you're going to measure with a plumb line all the vertical decisions that line up on a certain trajectory or pathway. The AC process is where the shoulder girdle from the back of the figure, which is the scapula, has a little foot that comes around and ends right here. And it's where the back of the scapula joins the clavicle. And there's a plane break right here. And that's called the AC process. And we'll talk more about that as we discover this. Now, your entire proportions are being set up right at the beginning of the drawing. And we're using a process called comparative measurement. So even drawing from a photograph, which this applies to either drawing from a photograph or drawing from any type of a live figure. Now, in your own studio, you can set up very simply. You can put 2 folding chairs back to back, and that's what I've done, or you can have a little small table underneath. That's a really convenient way of doing this. Now, in comparative measurement, it's just like the name implies. We're looking from our gesture across the form, and we're determining where another point is. And say this was in a different position, we want to make sure that that point lines up. And if you've drawn a construction line that's not correct, then begin again. Now, in this initial stage, you're just considering this overall trajectory. So here's this line of action on the whole arm. And you have a plane break right here and a plane break right here on the arm and across the form right here. So the width of the arm is determined by the skeletal structure. And underneath here we have the humerus bone, and it has the head of the humerus is up here. And the head of that bone trajects down the length of the upper arm. Now this is, we're not at this stage trying to get details. That's really important. We're just building the structure or foundation from the drawing. So details like actual surface of the skin or musculature, we're not so much worried about that. So this is just the overall trajectory of this arm from here to here, here to here. Then in block-in, which is the stage that we're talking about, we start becoming more aware of actual plane changes along this whole trajectory. So my recommendation is whatever reference you're using, your iPad, your photographs, set that up so it's in front of you. Get comfortable, put your drawing materials right to the side of you, and get this entire drawing set up correctly. So you're going to first do an overall gesture, move into early block-in, and then we're going to start in early block-in to determine proportions of length. And one of the things that you can do is come across on a joint and then compare this proportion up to the AAC process, this proportion up to this suprasternal notch. So you can tell from right here, here is the axilla, and this line goes clear across the form. We want to think globally. We don't want to just think in terms of arm or leg or foot or hand. We're thinking globally, clear across the form. And we're comparing. And you do this by sighting. So hold your pencil up to your photograph, and you're going to look for what is vertical, which is this, what is horizontal, which is this, and any degree of angle. Now hold your arm out straight and sight the angle that you see on the drawing, and that's called sighting. And then you're going to do a 4-part process. So you're going to sight, 1, 2, draw the decision. And then go back and quickly sight again and double check that what you sighted was done correct. So sight, draw, sight, check. Each one of the decisions that you make, you're comparing these angles. And that's part of the reason why we really want to start this drawing with straight lines. In straight lines, something's either correct or it's not. And that's an important part of the process. So I can go across the form and I can compare where this sits. And here's your navel mark right here. We're going to be looking at landmarks. We're going to be looking at bony landmarks, which are the bone marks of the skeletal system, or soft tissue landmarks, which are marks like the nipple point or the navel mark. Either one of those are soft tissue landmarks. So again, it's easiest if you sight the angle on the medial side and then build the arm from that direction. As we are doing this block-in, we'll be looking for any changes in direction for that particular whole trajectory. So look at this and break it down as plane changes. Now, the form is mostly rounded, and those are not on there. We're just implying because it's going to build a structure that we can make our measurements from and get accuracy. Okay, so this is one method of checking, and it's called comparative measurement, and it's a really good system to help you develop your drawing skills, both from life and from a photograph, either one. In a future demo, I'm going to be talking about individual components on the whole form. I'll be talking about from a different, more animated or imaginative point of view, how to set up drawing using those techniques as well. This is primarily based working from a photograph and the best way to approach it. So on the head mask, all I'm thinking about is the front plane of the face. And then I'm getting the top of the head. But this decision, this shape right here is primary to understanding the head shape. So right in here, that's the most important decision you're going to make on the mass of the head. The head, you can quickly draw out the hair. That's fine to do, but do it in a general shape. We're not looking for individual hairs or style of hair at this point. So we're looking for how this compares the base of the chin or mandible down to the suprasternal notch. Remember that from the base of the nose to the suprasternal notch is 1 hand length. Now a hand length is from here to the base of the palm. That's 1 hand length. And that's a good proportional scale. The shoulder width is 1 head length. The length from the base of the chin to the nipple point, 1 head length. 1 head length from the nipple point to the navel mark. So that's some important ratios. And the total length of the arm to the middle finger of the hand is 3 head lengths. The top of the long bone of the figure is the femur, and that's 2 head lengths. The base of the patella or kneecap, then there's another 2 head lengths to the bottom of the foot, or a total of 8 heads. In North America, most figures are, for the average, are 7.5 head lengths. So the 8-headed figure is more if you're drawing from imagination or memory. And that's a very sound way of drawing. The artist, that Edgar Degas, he was an American artist, and he wanted a skull where you would have 4 levels to that skull. On the first level, you would have kind of the basic drawing skills, learning how to draw, learning how to do a plaster cast. The second level would be an introduction to figure drawing, and the students would work from a live model. So they would have the model directly in front of them. The third level, he suggested, would be the students that are third-year students come down to that second level and take measurements from the figure and then go back up to their easels and draw the figure. The fourth-year students were to draw strictly from imagination. So that would have been a wonderful process. We're going to be talking about underlying anatomy in the future demonstrations. The other thing that we need to talk about, again, is the outer contour, outer arabesque. It's a word that I use continuously. Oftentimes I'll see students in beginning figure drawing only draw on the outside edge of the figure. And this can lead to some problems because you need to get your proportions of length from not only the exterior, but measure from the inside out. So you're getting decisions that relate one to another, and that way you don't get drift in your proportions of length. Again, we start very basic. We get a line of action and get its length and compare that length to other decisions around the form. This is positive space and this would be negative space. And negative space, although it's two-dimensional in this stage, is still part of the measuring process and very important to discovering how to draw this drawing. So those are some basic points to understanding blocking. You'll learn more about blocking as you begin to draw. So we're going to advance this drawing from this block-in stage Next, you'll take that figure and go into contour. And I'm just going to move this particular drawing right here that we talked about the block in. And then I will show you the underlying drawing as we begin to advance this drawing. So it doesn't stay in this stage very long. You can see that it immediately advances, and we want that, but we're moving from general to specific. And so that's the overall process. I'll be showing individual studies of anatomy, how to build up the rib cage, the pelvic structure. We'll begin with those on the next lesson. So I hope you've enjoyed this and referred to Canvas for further information about the figure. Thank you, and I'm happy to work with each of you individually. If you will do your first assignment and then the second assignment, that would be fantastic. And use these principles as you begin your assignments. Again, make sure that you set up carefully, put your drawing in front of you or whatever you're working from, and then begin to advance the drawing. And make sure your drawing paper is well anchored in 4 different positions. If you have movement at all in your drawing, you're going to get inaccuracy, so you don't want that. So you can use your clipboard against a shelf, you can use it against a little table or the back of another chair, and that's a good way to approach this. So I hope you've enjoyed this and look forward to next time. Take care.